Welcome to Catalytic Leadership, the podcast designed to help leaders intentionally grow and thrive. Here is your host, author, and leadership and executive coach, Dr. William Attaway.
Hey, it's William, and welcome to today's episode of the Catalytic Leadership Podcast. Each week, we tackle a topic related to the field of leadership. My goal is to ensure that you have actionable steps you can take from each episode to grow in your own leadership. I believe, like Craig Rochelle has said many times, that when a leader gets better, everybody benefits. Your team, your department, your customers, your clients, your spouse, your kids, everybody. Each week, we spotlight leaders from a variety of fields, locations, and organizations. My goal is for you to see that leaders can be catalytic no matter where they are or what they lead. I draw inspiration from the stories and journeys of these leaders, and I hear from many of you that you do too. Let's jump in to today's interview. It is an honor today to have Dominic Teich on the podcast. Dom Slice Teich brings his fighter pilot background and applies what he's learned to guide pilots, athletes, business owners, and students with afterburner techniques that American fighter pilots use to ensure mission completion. As an Amazon best-selling author, business owner, entrepreneur, civilian, and military instructor pilot, he knows that busy individuals and teams struggle with information overload. Since 2002, Slice has guided hundreds of students toward their goals. His blueprint is called Single Seat Mindset, an impactful group of 40-plus fighter pilot guides with a combined experience of 700-plus years. Proven formulas and life advice is shared to the Insider Circle community to ensure success and big goal achievement, all while avoiding overwhelm, overload, and flameout. They dive deep into the productivity world to provide guidance through short, impactful steps. Dominic, it is an honor to have you on the show. Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks. I'm looking forward to it.
I would love for you to share some of your story with our listeners, particularly around your journey and your development as a leader. How did you get started?
Yeah, you kind of keyed me into something that I don't know if I've talked about before, but from a leadership standpoint, I found myself at 14 years old. My uncle, who was the lead downhill ski instructor when I was growing up at the local ski hill, he took me under his wing and taught me how to ski. And I found myself at 14 teaching people downhill skiing lessons because we were little little punks skiing around on the ski hill and having a good time, and we thought we were pretty good, and honestly we had gotten pretty technically good at skiing. We were surrounded by all the best on the hill, and so we had access to essentially the level 3 ski instructors, which are the highest level that we would ski with every morning. So I found myself teaching people how to ski. And from a leadership standpoint, people wouldn't believe it now, but I was actually pretty introverted. And I think the lesson I learned, and I didn't know how to more or less contextualize it as a younger kid, but being introverted, I learned that was very contextual, meaning I could be introverted in a large group, right? If you put me on a stage, maybe I was introverted and I wouldn't want to do any sort of public speaking. But there was one day very specifically, it was the second or third day where I was teaching a small group of people how to ski, and they were beginner skiers, which I think are the toughest because, everything can go wrong all at once. So, they can have a 55-year-old person can fall down, lose all their gear, and then you have like the 6-year-old zip by you down the hill. And so now you have to learn how to, what's the priority right now? Is the 6-year-old that's going to go off the cliff, or do I have to help this person that's wrapped up like a pretzel? So I think from a leadership standpoint, I just learned that, hey, these people don't know that I'm shy. And so just kind of learning that as a young kid, and then really getting in my element and going, when I was in front of people teaching, going, hey, these people don't know, and so therefore I just need to let them know they're here to learn how to ski, so I'm going to teach them that. Fast forward to college, I taught, or I wasn't a clearly I was in college, so I was doing like math lessons and kind of the same thing, right? And then, in college, I was lucky enough to compete and be hired as a civilian flight instructor. So,
Nice.
At 18 years old, I'm sitting across the desk. I had 12 students under my wing, and there was only one student that was ever younger than me. So I was always the youngest, and my students were anywhere from 16 years old all the way up to he was an engineer or an architect or something like that, and he just wanted to fly to see his grandkids, and I think he was in his 70s. So the age span was huge. So what that taught me there was that every person's life experiences behind them are going to bring in a different lesson that you have to adapt to. And again, I was very clunky and robotic when I started out, right? Just because hey, this is how you learn how to fly, right? And after a while, you kind of grow into learning how to adapt to those circumstances. So those are kind of some of the early on leadership lessons that I learned. And I did bring a lot of that stuff when I joined the military, and especially as I became a fighter pilot. And there's some hard lessons learned there as well. But those were kind of the early ones. And I think that the important thing that I took from that is it's contextual, right? Like people don't know if you're an introvert a lot of times. So, that kind of helped me grow out, but I still am in certain situations. I mean, if I put myself with you and all of your doctor friends in a room, probably be pretty quiet, or I would go into questioning mode. So I would just be asking questions to try to learn after you read the room. So
I resonate so deeply with that because, like you, I'm an introvert on the Myers-Briggs. I'm all the way on the I side, right? And so, in every situation that I walk into, I'm exactly like what you just described. I'm going to ask questions. I'm going to listen. I'm going to throttle back, right? Because that's how I'm wired. Can you lead from that place? Well, of course you can. We have this idea that you have to look like this to be a leader. That's crazy. You can lead from how you are wired. You just have to understand it. And I love that you have a story and an understanding that you were gaining that knowledge and that insight so young that has helped you since. That's so powerful.
I think the other thing too is that you have to be it's okay, I guess, to maybe fear failure a little bit, right? Or at least know that it's there and know that you're going to have failures along the way. But I think that if you can get past that, and you can kind of, maybe not right away. I had a really hard time doing this as a younger guy, but just being able to laugh it off later, a week later, go, hey, and even talk about it, right? Because that really humanizes you as a person. And I just remember telling some of my students, hey, well, last week I did this with this guy, and I feel like such an idiot, ha ha ha, right? And then just move on, because that's part of life, right? That you're gonna have your mistakes, and man, I don't know if I don't remember who said the quote. Maybe it was Gandhi, but it was something along the lines of, I have winning or learning experiences. So the learning experiences being the failures, they're events, they're not you as a person. So I think that's an important piece too.
In all the context in which you've seen leaders, I'm sure, that were fantastic, and you've seen leaders that were less so. How would you define leadership?
Oh man, I think a good leader is going to know how to more or less look in towards themselves. And I think from a fighter pilot standpoint, one of the things that it's very simple construct. I think we all do it. We just don't know we're doing that. The people that grow very fast do it better than others, but it's plan, execute, debrief. So I like short, simple things, whether that's one thing or no more than three. But as you're putting your plan together at the beginning of the day, and you're thinking about that, you can tweak that plan based on how you debrief the day prior. So, and you can do those little debriefs throughout the day. You can constantly be tweaking your plan. So, but then as you're executing, just realizing, hey, as you execute, I mean, specifically as a fighter pilot, yes, there's the initial plan that we brief, that we put together, but then the pilots that are experienced and a little bit more intuitive, they talk about all the different contingencies. Hey, here's where this could go wrong. We can tweak the plan here. And then the next level of pilot is the one that has the experience, but also is good on their feet and that can kind of roll with the punches, right? So a leader, I don't know if I haven't really distilled that down into one sentence, but somebody that can, as they're executing, can be flexible on their feet, can kind of learn from the people, the environment, and then be able to debrief themselves. And I think that's one of the things that my pride blocked many years, right, was just being able to effectively say, I failed, I suck, right? And this is what I could have done better. Please give me feedback. And then as people are giving you feedback, just be able to absorb that, because it's difficult to hear a lot of times, especially when you're new, especially as a fighter pilot where everybody is better than you all the time, right? As a new guy for years. And even now I'm a instructor pilot at, if not the largest, in the top 3 largest fighter bases in the world. And man, I'm just middle of the road compared to some of these guys that are, Top Gun instructors of instructors, right? They're, they've got their doctorate or their Nobel laureate in teaching people how to fly fighter jets and do all that stuff. So I think just plan, execute, debrief, and then as you're debriefing yourself throughout the day, having that internal drive to want to be better, and knowing that also involves failure, which has been a very big consistent thing throughout my career and my life,
as we can all say.
Yeah.
I love that plan, execute, debrief. That's so simple and so clear. I talk a lot about evaluation with leaders, and I teach them that, doing a hot wash after what you do, and asking 3 questions. What went right? Let's celebrate the wins. What went wrong? Let's identify that. And how do we make it better next time? That's how you can process that. And I love that methodology that you bring to this, because it incorporates that evaluation. I think that is so important. Experience doesn't make you better. Evaluated experience makes you better. Yeah. And by doing that every time, daily, I think the last few years, if they have taught us nothing else, it's the importance of adaptability and pivoting. And it sounds like that's exactly what you teach with single seat mindset. What makes that mindset unique?
Well, so, the single seat theme kind of runs through that business, and people might be saying, well, why? That's kind of weird, but we're single seat fighter pilots is kind of the theme, right? So there's a certain mentality, a certain mindset that goes with single seat fighter pilots. I mean, if something goes wrong in the jet, as they say, you're the mayor of Cockpit City, so it's up to you to know what to do. And that requires a certain level of study, and that requires a certain level of determination and an individual spirit that is willing to attack and make sure that gets fixed. But that does not mean the dirty individualism, which is I'll do it all myself. I'm by myself. It's all mine, because we don't even operate. Rarely do we take off and fly just one aircraft at a time. So we are working within a team construct. I would say 99% of the time, unless we're flying a jet to go get it fixed at the depot or something like that. Almost always we are working with someone else. So teamwork is a very big piece of that. But I think the single seat mindset is I need to know, as the instructor or the flight lead, that my wingmen, when they take off with me, they know all the basics. They know all the blocking and tackling. They know their checklists. They know the departure, arrival. They know all of we call it QUEEP, right? So that word QUEEP is it's information that you have to know that's not fun, right? It's like paperwork. Nice. It's all of it's a bad word, right? It's just all of the stuff that's unfun, because we want to know all of that stuff cold, so that when we get to the fighting portion, that's the fun part, right? It's the exciting piece of it. So I think that's the big thing from a fighter pilot standpoint, is that not only do we go through very rigorous training that takes many years, by the time that you become an instructor pilot, you've been, you at least have a 4-year degree. A lot of us have master's degrees. You've been through different military trainings. You've been through a bunch of different flight schools. And as you go through your instructor pilot upgrade, you essentially have some semblance of a doctor's degree in flying because of the amount of time, effort, energy, and the rigidity to that. And the reason that's important is that it helps your brain. These are all learned experiences, just like becoming a doctor, right?
Sure.
Your brain's plastic, so you can learn how to do the things in the right order. And I think that's the biggest thing, is that fighter pilots, as we do things at 800 plus miles an hour on a daily basis, we learn as humans, we can only do one thing at a time. So putting those things in order in a very rapid pace, those are very leverageable into high performance professions, process management, and progress, because you want to know, you can kind of see things as the mission is moving forward. You can go, oh no, we need to be doing this here. And that's a learned experience. And the more and more you do it, the more experience you get, the more you debrief, the more you learn. Right. And so it kind of becomes this cycle. And you'll find yourself doing these little mini debriefs, like one of the authors in the books that we write, but he talks about little mini debriefs throughout the day, where even as you're you've put your plan in motion, you're executing, you go, oh wait, that's not working, and you kind of tweak that mini debrief. And so I was flying with a student, and student said, it was, I was reading the competent wingman program is something that we have. And so he's like, I was reading that, and I was like, it was so refreshing to know that you had failed. And many of my messages are about my failure and how to avoid them in the first place. But then if you get yourself into that situation, how to get out of them. And so I've humanized myself, but those mini debriefs, I told him, dude, I make mistakes all the time, flying every single day. The problem is that I've seen them so many times that I'm already correcting them. As I'm seeing myself make the mistake, I'm correcting it. And that is a trait, and that's something that you'll learn to do over time. If you want to pursue that, some people will learn it faster than others.
I love that. Love that. You have the call sign Slice. Where did you get that?
That was from a failure. So as you can see, I laugh now, but I look back at just all of my millions of second chances I've been given by people in my life and through life. And so that one, as a young fighter pilot, it was a little bit different, but we were essentially doing dogfighting. So close in maneuvering against another fighter jet. And I'm supposed to try to shoot the instructor that day. I'm the wingman, and I'm learning still, and I'm supposed to shoot him. Well, I break a training rule, and I point at his jet too long while I'm shooting him, and we have a very close pass. And so we almost hit each other. So in the naming, they do a naming ceremony where all of your peers give you your name. And typically it's because you did something stupid. So in my case, I tried to slice my instructor in half. I was also living in Japan at the time in an American fighter squadron, and the squadron mascot was a samurai. So it kind of fit the theme there. And granted, I do really love to golf. But it's not because I have
just a wicked slice, right?
I used to. I figured I got to get rid of that so that my story holds true.
That's fantastic. So you mentioned the book series, Single Seat Wisdom, right? So
yes,
what can you tell me about that?
So it's kind of I call it the worst hobby that I ever started. So it's now a business. So Single Seat Mindset is the parent, essentially the parent business. I leveraged, so I had a passive real estate investing company where we bought distressed multifamily properties, we renovated them, and we just cash flow them. And I used and I had another business which I turned off because it wasn't serving our bigger purpose. It was it's profitable, but it was all about money, and so it kind of burned me out. So I shut that one down, and I used the business stuff that I had learned from the first business, and we started Single Seat Mindset during COVID. Because when COVID kicked off, as humans, we're very social animals. And the students were we had a class of students that they struggled more than any other class we've ever had. So it kind of started with, it took on a bunch of different names. It's called the Competent Wingman Program now.
Hmm.
But essentially once a week, I was sending the class a short 2-minute message. And it was all of the stuff. It was a fighter pilot's perspective on life, based on my personal experiences, my failures, but also what I've seen throughout my career to help them as a fighter pilot.
Hmm.
And again, it was a fighter pilot's perspective, but it wasn't necessarily about flying. It would help them in the flying because their personal life, which a lot of people don't normally take care of the right way, or you have to learn how to do that, and that helps you become a better fighter pilot because you have everything in the periphery, you have that all put together. So that's where it started, which then I got really sick after about 5 or 6 classes manually sending this message out. And so then I was like, I've created businesses. So I made a website and I automated it so people could just sign up for it.
Mm-hmm.
And then other people outside of the fighter pilot regime started using this program. Student pilots at a different base would tell their friends about it, and then people would start using it. So then I went to a lot of the older instructors and I said, hey, what are you guys doing with all your stories when you retire?
Mm-hmm.
Right? You're good at telling stories. I know you have them because I've heard them in the bar.
Yeah, right.
Let's put these on paper. And I had already published a book called Single Seat Investor, which was a book that I handed to prospective investors that wanted to passively invest in like an apartment syndication. Okay. So I had already learned a lot of the hard lessons about how to start a business website, like all of that, the queep, if you will.
Yeah, right. That's right.
And so what I did is, again, it was still kind of a hobby. We were just giving back. We published this book, Single Seat Wisdom, and it was essentially 20 short stories that you could read in less than 10 minutes. If you're a really fast reader, you probably read it in 3 to 5 minutes. And then at the end of it, it was that fighter pilot's perspective, or the wisdom summary at the end of the chapter. So for instance, there's one on, fighter pilot fatherhood. So, a Christian perspective on how to be a dad and a fighter pilot. Another one from a guy that as a young dude I screamed at and had a mistake and failed and was not a good leader. We ended up reconnecting years later. Great human being. He's been a fighter pilot in multiple different aircraft, and he wrote a chapter. And his is about how you are not entitled to anything you don't earn, because we have a very we have a culture that supports just handouts and all of this garbage that we're seeing nowadays. So we put these stories together so people could read them. They're short and they're so different, and every chapter is written by a different person. So they have a different perspective, what the lessons they've learned. And there are, like you've seen, there are similarities as you start to see successful people. There are similarities, but how they perceive that is, I think, the important piece. And that also ties into being a good leader, is that everybody has their own. If you want to use book knowledge and try to robotically apply that in all situations, you're going to fail. But that's how you learn. So I wouldn't be afraid of that. But if you went to college and you have a degree in leadership or whatever, it's not going to necessarily work right out the gate. And in fact, most of the time it won't. Just like a syllabus doesn't fit every student. In fact, it fits almost no students. You as the instructor have to fit the syllabus to the student.
Yeah.
So all that to say, Single Seat Wisdom is just a compilation of fighter pilot stories with, a twist, their wisdom at the end of it. And we got so much good feedback that I decided to stop making it a hobby. I turned Single Seat Mindset into an actual business. And then we just published Single Seat Wisdom Volume 2, and we have people signed up for 3 as well. So this, I think, every year around Veterans Day, we'll publish another volume of Single Seat Wisdom, which is just 20 more fighter pilot stories with their unique twist. This next book that we have coming out is, I think, I reconnected with a childhood friend and her grandfather who's passed, who wrote a bunch of stuff, who was a fighter pilot. I think we're going to figure out how to publish his story. Is it posthumously, right? So he's gone. So that's some bigger things have been happening because of that. But it's been a really cool project. It's been a lot of work, herding 20 fighter pilots, type A people. And then I think the most impactful piece, at least for me, is we give all that money to a children's cancer nonprofit from Single
Oh,
Seat Mindset. So it
oh,
goes to families that have kids that are going through cancer treatments in the Pacific Northwest, and it just kind of it aligns us with giving, right? And
mm,
am I 100% altruistic? No, I don't think anybody is, because I get a lot of good feelings from this, right? I get a lot of
yeah.
drive, knowing that we're building something that's kind of timeless. It lives
Mm.
on, even when we're gone.
I love that. You are an entrepreneur. You are a father. You're a husband, a business owner. You're a follower of Jesus. All of these different parts of your life. At this point, and reserving the right to say you're going to learn and keep learning going forward. At this point in your life, what are some things that you would have liked to know when you were starting out as a wannabe peak performer?
Mm. I think for me, I think a lot of people, if you open your eyes, those coaches are
Mm,
around you,
yeah.
um, and it's something that we've kind of started formulating a little bit. Is a book that I want to write for about the 10-year-old to 18-year-old group, right? Because
Mm,
that's a very
mm,
formidable age in
yeah.
life, right? So
Yeah.
what would I have told myself if I was 10 to 18 years old is I'm going, hey, I think I want to do this. How do I get there? Well,
Yeah.
having that mindset, that willingness to apply yourself and dedicate yourself to something bigger than video
Mm,
games and social media and all the literally just junk, the
yeah.
noise nowadays, right? Whether
Yeah.
that's reading books or doing something once a day that makes you uh, a better person and closer to the person that God wants you to be, right?
Mm,
So the mindset I think is important, and just wanting to looking around and going, wow, everybody is doing this and wasting time. I'm not going to do that. So
yeah.
having that mental fortitude. The second piece is, and these aren't necessarily in order, but the second piece to that is having a coach or a guide,
Mm,
right? So, and that's what Single Seat Mindset, that company is. I put it together as I'm not, we're like the fighter pilots. They're not the heroes in this story. We are just,
mm,
hey, here's some lessons that we've learned. You can take these. They don't take very long to learn, and then that helps you avoid a lot of our failures, but kind of control your own path to success. So that'd be
mm,
the second piece that I think was maybe my Achilles heel. Is I was so driven. I was such a type A person. I had kind of this scorched earth technique where I'm like, there's the goal, and I'm just get out of my way so that
mm,
I can get to that goal. So just
yeah.
pushing so hard that a lot of times it can kind of burn people along the way. And
Yeah.
that was more of a learned thing. I don't know if, people could tell me, hey, dude, like you're being a little bit abrasive as you get there. And it's like, well, that's part of learning. So it's personality dependent. And then, you've got the mindset, you've got the willingness to do that. Maybe asking, I think that would be something that I would have grabbed onto a little bit more, is just maybe being observational of the people around me, and just asking for some coaching and guidance.
Mm,
And I don't
mm,
know if I would have been able to learn that, because pride gets in your way,
yeah.
especially if you're a type A person and you're very driven like I was.
Yeah.
And that's just a learned thing. I don't know if I would necessarily do things different, because that's how I learned, right? And I was willing
Mm,
to do that.
mm,
And then the last one, you can read all of the different self-help books. There is a trend among people that are successful, and that's action. And you can
yeah.
be, like you said, you can be the most introverted, you can be the most extroverted, but we don't learn from an academic standpoint. I can't go to
Mhm.
college and then just be sprinting out the gate. I have to go
Yep.
learn those things and put them into action. So the mindset needs to be there. You have to have that mental fortitude to think about the stuff and go, I want to be better. I would say asking for some help, right? Putting your pride
Mm,
aside if you can, and watching for those coaches and guides in your life, and just go, hey, dude,
yeah.
what would you do in this situation? And then the last one is, if all else fails, the guide's not there, just get after it. Start
Yeah.
taking some action. That's how you're going to learn. You may run, like me, I'm willing to run down 20 different trails just to know that those are the wrong trails, because I'll learn something along the
Mm,
way. I'll
that's
come back
good.
to start and I'll go, wow, I learned all of that stuff. So everybody's sitting back here, they're figuring out what to do, right? All the
Yeah.
figurers, right?
Yeah, right.
I'm just sitting here, it's called what? Analysis paralysis. So they're just
That's right.
analyzing everything and they're like, oh, what should I do? And I'm like, well, I just ran down those 20 trails. I
Yeah.
learned a bunch of stuff. Those are all the wrong trails. So now I
Yeah.
know that that one is the right trail.
Mm-hmm. You talked a minute ago about the single seat mindset business and the insider circle.
Yeah.
Who would benefit the most from that?
I think our the individuals that would get the most from our stuff is probably so if you're a kind of like I had talked about before, if you are someone that is driven to get something out of life, that is who we serve. So regardless of age, if you want to grow or be better or be inspired or take action, that's generally the person, right? If you're one that wants a handout or you have a victim mindset and you think that the government's going to solve all your problems, we will turn you off immediately. So don't even look unless you want to change that faulty mindset. So I'd say that's the broad brushstrokes. I think the people that get the most out of this is male and females in the age group of about 16 years old to maybe the first 3 years out of college. So 16 to high 20s, I would say, is going to help them the most, because a lot of our writing, even when I talk to these fighter pilots and I send them the writer's guide, hey, here's your avatar that you are writing to. That's the age group that we try to write to, because those years, as you are going through high school, college, and then exiting college, you're doing a lot of figuring on your own. You're taking action and you're learning a lot. And I just remember those were the most life-changing years, was 16 all the way up into my high 20s. By the time I hit 30, I'd worked hard enough to kind of stopped failing so much. I still failed, but it wasn't, I was failing every single day, multiple times. It was like, okay, I had little missteps here and there, but I had learned enough to where I'd kind of piece things together. Now, would I get something out of these stories? Yeah. I mean, I get feedback from, people that are retired that have grandkids, and they're like, man, these stories are fun to read because they're so different. Chapter to chapter, it's such a different chapter or message that is so it's so different, right? And it doesn't exist on the internet or anywhere else until we put it together. Nobody has taken the time to put fighter pilot stories together like this. So it is really one of a kind type of project, which has been kind of the cool piece of it.
Every leader that I talk to is a reader. They're constantly learning, they're constantly growing, and that can take different forms, of course, in different ways. Is there a book that has made a big impact on your life, a favorite book that you would recommend that leaders read?
So the one that comes to mind is the compilation series, and you're going to probably laugh, but it's called The Bible. I think it's
I know this one well.
It's the highest selling book in history. And I laugh because if you look at even where the US is right now, if you look at big civilizations, right? Like we tend to we go through this age of conquest, and then we build the things up. We connect everything. We build schools. We do all this stuff, and then we rip it all apart.
Yep.
And then we start over. And Sir John Glubb talked about this 250-year life cycle of a civilization, right? Where we roughly about every 250 years, we go through these big waves, these big changes as a civilization. Now, granted, China's been around a long time, but they've had these big shifts in power, shifts and changes. And if you look at America, I'm bad at public math, but I think we're almost at 250 years. And if you look at some of the stuff that's changed, whether that's in technology, artificial intelligence, robots, politics, redefining our biological nature, which has never been correct, right? So you look at the Bible, you read that, and you start to see. So the thing is that I thought the Bible was outdated. I thought it didn't apply. I had this faulty mindset, and then I said, I am going to take some Bible classes. And after the second year of Bible classes, I started piecing things together and I was like, wow, this is all very relevant to our day and age. And the other piece to that is I've seen from a single seat fighter jet from my bubble canopy, I've seen where Abram, who then became Abraham, and that's the father of multitudes, right? So Abraham, way cooler call sign than Slice, but where he originated in Ur. And then I've seen the Tigris and the Euphrates. I've seen all of the Syrian landscape. I've landed in Turkey, right, where St. Paul traveled in the New Testament. I've been to the Jordan River. I've stood on Mount Nebo where Moses supposedly died. So that's been a really cool experience that I wouldn't have gotten if I wasn't in the military. Yeah. But being able to see that geographically, that's a huge piece to the Bible, right? The history of the Bible, the context, but then the geography as well. So all that to say, it's my big plug. If you think the Bible's outdated, like I did, well, I'd ask that maybe instead of doing that, take some action and take a 1-year Bible study and really dive deep, because there's a ton of really good lessons. I would say a close second is Single Seat Wisdom, a compilation.
Well done. Well done. That's great. If you could share, as we're wrapping up, if you could share one piece of advice with the leaders who are listening today, what would that be?
I'd say one word. It's action. So you're going to learn by taking action, and your personality is going to be different than other people. So yeah, watch how other people do things, learn as much as you can, have those coaches and guides close to you, but have the mindset, the willingness to learn. And the way that you're going to do that is through action. And a lot of times you will fail. So don't, just get out there, right? When you start public speaking, they say, tell me about an apple. And then you get up there and you just try to talk about an apple and you sound like an idiot, right? But then you figure out how to talk about Africanized dirt, apples, all these weird things that you never know about, but you can just talk about them. So just take action and realize that you're going to fail and pick yourself back up again and try again. Good word.
Good word. I know our listeners are going to want to stay connected with you. What is the best way for them to do that?
Yep. So singleseatmindset.com is our main launch pad. There's links to our social media. There's a link to the Single Seat Wisdom books. There's a book page. All of it's right there. We're building it right now, but there is on the main web page access to the insider circle, so that we're piecing that together. It's constantly growing, but that's where you can access the Competent Wingman program and all that. So singleseatmindset.com. And then for your podcast listeners, if they've listened up to this point, they can go to singleseatmindset.com/podcast gift. It's all one word, all lowercase, podcast gift. And I'm giving 3 Single Seat Wisdom books away, shipping included, to anybody that lives in the US. So whoever signs up for that first, they'll get a free copy of the book, no strings attached. It's yours to keep and read.
I love that. I'll put those links in the show notes so folks can run and do that now and take action. I've heard something about that today. It's important.
Yeah.
Dominic, thank you so much. Your gift of generosity here today and sharing the wisdom that God has granted you in your journey so far has just been so impactful. Thank you.
Thank you for having me on your show. I really enjoyed it.
Thanks for joining me for this episode today. As we wrap up, I have a couple of requests for you. I'd love for you to do 2 things. First, subscribe to this podcast so you don't miss an episode. And if you find value here, I'd love it if you would rate it and review it. That really does make a difference in helping other people to find this podcast. Second, if you don't have a copy of my newest book, Catalytic Leadership, I'd love to put a copy in your hands. If you go to catalyticleadershipbook.com, you can get a copy for free. Just pay the shipping so I can get it to you, and we'll get one right out. My goal is to put this into the hands of as many leaders as possible. This book captures principles that I've learned in 20 plus years of coaching leaders in the entrepreneurial space, in business, government, nonprofits, education, and the local church. You can always connect with me on LinkedIn to keep up with what I'm learning and thinking about. And if you're ready to take a next step with a coach who can help you to intentionally grow and thrive as a leader, I'd be honored to help you. Just go to catalyticleadership.net to book a call with me. And stay tuned for our next episode next week. Until then, as always, leaders, choose to be catalytic.
Thanks for listening to Catalytic Leadership with Dr. William Attaway. Be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts so you don't miss the next episode. Want more? Go to catalyticleadership.net.